Great. Well, welcome. You and I made it. I figured it out. I'm all alone in the building running the tech stuff, so we'll see what happens. I hope good things. Grant Smith did a great job of setting this up, and so his belief is any idiot can do it. And we're going to test that together. I'm an average idiot, and I'm going to see, can we get this to go live and stay live when it's just us together? My hope is yes. Man, I don't know, have you got out and played with your kids in the snow yet? I got to play a few rounds with my kids. Our favorite, the Lawson house, is to get the old, we have this old John Deere riding mower that was a hand-me-down. I think it's older than I am, but if I do a couple laps around just by myself, then I can get some sleds behind it. And man, we do some Indiana sledding where there's no elevation, but you got an old mower just pulling you around. So good luck if that's a new adventure. I hope you can have some fun. And weirdly this morning, I had just this beautiful ski in to Northeast here, where I literally put my cross-country skis on my front porch and skied all the way here. I didn't have to cross a single plowed driveway or anything. So it's just a beautiful morning. It's weird where cross-country skiing helps you get to your job. I know we're not that far north, but what a fun time it's been this morning already. Well, I'm here to share the sermon. And of all the options, we decided this one would be a fun one to do. I was excited to come to the building. I told everyone else I would do it. I really wanted to do a joke like, you know, in euchre where you have such good cards that you tell your partner, I don't even need you. I'm going to win this all by myself. Do like a loner hand. I wanted to do that and bring you like live worship, but I'm not Adam. I'm no good. Adam's really maybe the only one on our team that could really pull off a true loner hand. But he doesn't live close to the building and doesn't own skis. So here I am. I thought about doing a lip sync, but it's hard to know how things are landing when you're just in a room all alone. The joke might have been done from start, but I wouldn't know because I would just be alone laughing to myself at how funny I am. So Tony, you're welcome in Florida. I know that would have just destroyed you on the inside to watch me slowly try to lip sync for a full song, but I didn't. But I did want to share with you this morning a story about growing up in Minnesota. And since I'm all alone on my own tech resources, I'm going to have to try to do this and hope it works out here. I'm going to share with you a picture from my laptop and hope that you have the ability to make out what is happening. Let's see here. I'm going to touch the back of this thing, and yeah, you can't see a thing. But there you can. That fool is me. Back in my high school self, I thought, what a fun thing. Make a leap and see if I can make it. This is a favorite game for my brothers and I back in high school. We loved to play the game, Can It Hold You? So you get to the lake that was becoming unfrozen, but in Minnesota they freeze so solid that it kind of leaves like a big floating ice cube in the middle that kind of melt from the outside in. And depending upon which way the wind's blowing and what corner of the lake you're on, sometimes you can get to one of these massive like icebergs in the middle of the lake if it's blown to your corner. And sometimes it's strong enough to hold you. Other times you make the leap and you are just suddenly waist deep into very cold water. But what a fun risk together. So my brothers and I, we would play the game where we would say to each other, I bet it can hold you. And if it can hold you, if you're able to stand up on it, then I'll come out. And they would always try to get me to go first. I was a little bit of the bigger boned, you know what I mean? Bigger boned brother. My other brothers liked cross country, and I thought that sounded like no fun. But so for me, they would always be like, all right, hey Dave, if you're able to leap and get up on it, then we'll come out. We'll do the same. But there always had to be kind of that, the most brave or the most dumb. Depends on which position. I like to think I was the most brave, and my brothers like to think I was the most easily manipulated. With just a simple, they would say, you'll be a legend if, Dave. I was like, oh, I'll be a legend? All right, here I go. So I would make this leap, and I think this idea of leaping on the thin ice actually has a little something to connect with the idea of faith, right? On some level, I am committing with my actions enough belief in the ice that it can hold me, that I'm going to leap with my full weight, hold nothing back, and go for it. because my belief is the ice is strong. And I'm not trying to say it's about like the strength of my faith, but it is the strength of the object. I could have incredible faith and really go for it, lean in hard and leap, and find the ice is not good. And I fall in. So if it's about my strength or my faith, it just breaks down. But if it's about the quality of the ice or the quality of the thing in which I hope, that does matter. And then my faith can find sure footing. And I think that's like an interesting thing. And we're going to look at Acts 10 today, and we're going to see kind of, we're going to see Luke kind of showing us the faith and how that interacts with this guy Cornelius. But I'd be amiss if I didn't at least show you what happens when you jump on the thin ice. I'm going to try to show you this again with the highest technical capabilities alone. Okay, so here's one. I make the leap. Oh, this is a full video back when digital cameras were in their infancy. Yeah, as you can see, we try pole vaulting, but I can't pretend that every time it was a success. I tried with a bin there, and it just didn't work well. Well, that was a lot of hardship to show you that, but hopefully you get the idea. Let's look at Acts 10 together, if you don't mind. If you have your Bible with you, you have your Bible app, go ahead and open that up. Let's look at Acts 10. And the verse sections that I was assigned that we're working our way through is just Acts 10, 1 through 8. So really all we get is kind of this like beautiful setup to the story. The author of Acts, Luke, wants us to know some things and kind of get our minds into the story. And I want to try to help us step into this ancient story and kind of look at like, what is Luke trying to do here? What's he trying to get us to see and open our eyes to? So Acts 10, verse 1, it says, at Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion who was known as the Italian regiment. He and his family were devout and God-fearing. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. One day, at about 3 p.m, he had a vision. He saw an angel of God who came to him and said, Cornelius. So let's just take that first little section there. Let's think about what is Luke trying to help us get from this story. He, like any author, he is trying to help us focus our attention. The details he includes, the details he leaves out, kind of help us see a picture. He's inspired by the Holy Spirit, so I've never quite gotten there where I thought I wrote something and it felt like everyone else agreed that was God's word or inspired by the Spirit. There's been times maybe where people would say like, yeah, that sermon, the Spirit was using you, Dave, but writing rarely happens for me. But here we see in Acts 10, if you've been reading along with us or following along, Acts 10 is this like pivotal story in Acts. When Jesus was about to leave the earth, he said to his earliest followers, go to Jerusalem and then Samaria and then the ends of the earth. And so far in the narrative, we've gone from Jerusalem. We focus a ton on Peter and John in Jerusalem, the early disciples. They're experiencing Jesus, what the early church in Jerusalem looked like. In a couple chapters ago, we saw persecution break out. And then in chapter 8, we see Philip, after Stephen's stoning, we see Philip going to Samaria, which really is like almost this half step to not Jewish. They're almost Jewish. They're kind of half-breeds, if you will. Is how they would have been thought of at the time. So Luke is like, okay, the gospel starts in Jerusalem. There's some amazing things going on there. Persecution comes. The gospel moves out to Samaria through Philip. And then we get a quick detour to Saul because the story is going to kind of follow him. The apostles are going to fade in a couple chapters. We're not going to follow them much more. Peter and John kind of become minor characters and only show up as they interact with Saul or Paul later on in the story. So this is kind of Peter's last dramatic thing, and there's like a baton passing here. There's the Gospels crossing a threshold, and Luke wants to make sure that we don't miss what God is doing, like how God is moving from where the Gospel has been with the early Jews, and now into Gentiles, which is exciting for you and for me because we're invited in, brother and sister. This is like our spiritual heritage. This is how the Gospel comes to us. Because as I looked at this and I tried to like sit back with the earliest followers, it's so hard But they would have been familiar with this thing of Genesis 17. In Genesis chapter 17, verse 13, it says, this is the Lord speaking, my covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. He's talking about circumcision there. This is what they would have thought about when they thought about circumcision. It's an everlasting covenant. This is something God's done with us and our people, and we have like his marking on our bodies that shows we have this everlasting covenant with God. So they have this like paradigm that, man, is God moving out of the Jewish people? No, we have an everlasting covenant with God, and they do. And what is interesting here is Jesus is opening a door for all of us, and Cornelius is kind of at the front of that line. The Lord is moving something here, and he's doing it with Peter close in proximity. So Peter, the pillar of the early church there in Jerusalem, it seems like, him and John, Luke wants to make sure we kind of see, here is what God is doing, breaking into reality. So when we see descriptors of who Cornelius is, he and his family were devout and God-fearing. The God-fearing is like a line that if we were ancient people in that time period, we would have known. That was like a special designation. He was interested in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was interested in Yahweh. Maybe he went to the synagogue, maybe was part of it, was getting in on some practices, but circumcision just felt like that was crazy talk. He wasn't drinking that Kool-Aid, and so God-fearing was a specific designation. He was moving towards Yahweh, but circumcision just kind of felt like a hard explain to his superiors. Like, hey guys, I know I'm in the army and I've given you my life for the next 20 years, which was what an enlistment in the Roman emperor looked like. Hey, I know I've given you the 20 years of my life, the prime of my life, but I would like 4 to 5 days off for this religious practice, and it's going to change me forever, and I'll be kind of incapacitated for a while. It's a hard sell to his superiors as he tries to tell them this idea. So we see that he's like moving towards Yahweh, but there's this barrier of circumcision that seems to keep him kind of outside. And so like Luke wants us to see that. And then he wants us to see who this man is. It says he gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. And then this day, a vision comes up. The angel comes to him and says, Cornelius. And Cornelius stared at him in fear, which is like just the right response if someone shows up while you're busy praying and they look like an angel. He just says, he's so afraid, and he says, what is it, Lord? The angel answered, your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. And again here, notice the second time the author highlights your gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. I think we should stop for just a second and say, that's interesting. That comes up twice here. And even that an angel mentions the good behavior of Cornelius. And now back to my jumping onto ice. I think we could go too far in saying like, oh man, it's the quality of this man's faith. His faith in action gets him this gift. But I think more it's that he trusts in a quality God who is offering something here. And as we think about why is this coming up here, is there other passages that talk about this? Of course. Matthew 25:40 is one of like those classic passages, the sheep and goats. God separates people. And on one, he's like, hey, welcome to my blessing. You have taken care of the least of these. And they're like, wait, when did we take, or he says, we took care of you. Or you took care of me. It's getting weird, sorry. Jesus says, you took care of me. And they said, Lord, when did we see you? When did we take care of you? And he says, whenever you took care of the least of these, it's like you did it for me. There, we see that God is putting himself as the recipient to any of the care we give to the least of these, to the people around us. And man, so here again, we see that the God of the universe is making sure that we don't miss it, that he cares about the least of these. He cares like it's done unto him. And here again, in this story, the author of Luke is making sure that we don't miss it, that it's important to God that we care for the poor. And now, I don't know about you, but that can sit like fairly convicting. Right? We live in kind of a socially segmented, like the stratas of society. Like the people in my neighborhood have somewhere around the similar amount of money that I do. Because if you didn't, you can't live in that neighborhood. You can't afford the house. And then we get a fair amount of distance away from each other, separated by these neighborhoods of income brackets almost. It's easy. I've just been on quarantine, so it is super easy for me to not see anybody. And I didn't. I stayed in a room all by myself for a week. And so even I had the sermon prepared before this. I was supposed to do it last week, but all of us were quarantined, so sorry about that. But when I sit with this idea, what have I done this week? You know, it's easy to think like, oh, I'm a really good guy. I care about people. But when I start sitting down like this week, maybe this month, what am I doing? Where does my faith boil into action? Where does my belief and my experience of such a good God get me hooping and hollering and yelling and making a ruckus and inviting others to experience this? Is this good news of Jesus, that I have found solid footing in Jesus for my soul? Does that translate into action towards other people? And man, if I'm honest, I think there's been other seasons where I've done better at that. But what I do want to say to us as a community is you don't have to go alone. Same as the ice, almost the most risky or most daring person goes first. You don't have to be the first to leap. There's people in our community that are doing incredible things on this line. You could talk to Julie Von Gutten, who is doing just incredible work with the teen moms. If there's ever someone who is the least of these, is teen moms who have such a hard road ahead. And they have so much riding on it, a whole nother generation that's following them, that they're trying to do their best. And Julie and a team of people entered the story and care. Danielle and Noelle had a person live with them while they figured this out, while a child was taken from their mother. Or you could talk to people who are doing foster care within our community. The Smiths, Heather and Greg, went all the way until they ran out of energy and said, we laid it all on the line. We gave it all. There's nothing left to give. And what an incredible place to reach the end of what's possible. That story inspires me. I know that there's others in the foster care system the same, Roy and Ashley, who have gone to the point and said, we gave it all. We need to get recharged, and we're going to take the next adventure. And man, if you are sitting there thinking like, I don't know where to go, you don't have to go alone. Look at around us. There's brothers and sisters making leaps, making moves towards finding them. Man, if you want the outreach high school community that we run, in that story, Catherine's brought people to me where I'm entering the story because as she was talking with a girl, her dad is on house arrest and has abused her. But he's on house arrest, so he can't leave the house, and trying to navigate a challenging situation. Man, there are people that are entering into the brokenness around us. And so if you say like, man, I don't know where to leap, what kind of leap could I make? Man, find the people around you who are leaping, who are going for it, and go with them. Follow them and see that they are finding a way to put their faith into action. And they're finding that, man, the God of the universe cares for them and has them. It doesn't mean it's safe and easy, and maybe they're wet and tired, but man, what a rowdy adventure with God. And I think that's where we're invited into, brothers and sisters. A rowdy adventure where we put our faith into action. Now let's keep looking for a second here. If we keep going down, the angel answered, your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. Now send men to Joppa to bring back a man named Simon, who is called Peter. He is staying with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea. When the angel who spoke to him had gone, Cornelius called 2 of his servants and a devout soldier who was one of his attendants. So just imagine you're Cornelius. You had what you believed to be an angelic visitor. But as often seems, it happens when you're alone. Now you're about to go make the move where you think like, dude, people are going to think I'm crazy. So you will get the people who trust you the most and be like, hey guys, I know it's a little out of the ordinary, but an angel showed up. Yeah, I know. And he talked to just me when you guys were all gone. You know, it's like such a challenging start. So many times when the angel comes, we're like, oh man, if only I had an angelic messenger. You're like, well, actually, it's pretty hard. If you're a human, trying to follow what God would say when it's just you in the room, like what a challenging thing. So the angel speaks to him, he gets his descendants, and he tells them everything that happened and sends them to Joppa. Like, again, what a move of faith. And now I think here's an interesting thing in this story again, that the angel could have told Cornelius all the information he needed to know. We're going to see here as the story plays on, and Josh is going to cover this next week, that God uses Peter, not the angel. That it's not the angel who gives the information of how to say a yes to Jesus, but it's Peter. God chooses to use his people to share the good news of his love with people around us. And so I think we not only have this opportunity to put our faith into action as far as caring for the downtrodden around us, or the least of these, whatever that means, but we also have this invitation that the God of the universe is making his story known, his love known through you and through me. I think that's just like something so interesting. We're invited in. And I think when I think about Cornelius, it's interesting. I don't know about you, maybe this is just me, but when I've grown up in evangelical Christian culture, we often talk about the saved or lost. It's like these either or categories. Either we're the saved, they're the lost. And this idea of, I'm not disputing the terms, I'm just saying like they lead us to certain conclusions once you categorize and quantify humans, these unique people that God is moving in and that God is wooing all of humanity to himself. When we put it in those categories, when I think of like lost people, I think of like the prodigal son, someone just going living buck wild and their life is horrible. Maybe someone who's addicted to drugs or some kind of addiction that's really like ruining their life. That's when I think of the lost people. But it's interesting here in this story, Cornelius is clearly like has his faith in action. He's responding to the knowledge of God that he currently has at that time. Maybe with some arguments of circumcision not quite being there, but many of the things he's saying yes to Jesus, as much as he knows about who Jesus is. But when we think about lost people, do we think about people who have good lives, who have jobs of influence, who have security for the next 20 years? What a interesting thing for the Cornelius to have. His job prospects are looking good. He has resources to share. He's like a good person. He's going and caring for the poor, and maybe even would convict the other Jewish people around him to say like, wow, you're really doing what we say. You're really putting your faith into action. What about us? When we look at our neighbors, do we see them as people that God is wooing to himself? And do we see ourselves as people who might be invited into this ruckus faith in action story? That maybe God is inviting us to leap in some crazy ways of some concern and care for our neighbor. Maybe they need more truth of who God is than they currently have. Their lives might be good, but maybe, just maybe, God's inviting us in. Man, I think of like one story like this is a guy named Colin is helping out, and he's helping lead in this high school community. And there's a young man who has said yes to Jesus and is trying to find his way. But he has nobody in his family who's following Jesus, and actually his mother died of cancer this year, terminal cancer. Came up when he was maybe in middle school, fought it off, and now as he's in like his getting close to his senior year here, it again feels like, man, cancer came back and claimed his mother's life. And he's showing up to this event, and Colin has done just an incredible job of caring for this man, or this young man, in just such an incredible way that the last gathering we were at together before I went into quarantine, we're going to break out in these groups where we're going to get to talk. And like Colin stands up, and literally on his heels is this young man right behind Colin. And just voting with his feet that Colin is creating this space where he gets to hear more of who God is and gets to respond with Colin's help this next step. And like for me, as I watch that, as this young man's like almost tripping on top of Colin as they walk inside to another space, I just thought like, what a beautiful and powerful story. This young man has economic advantages, his family has a good job, but he needed somebody to step in and show him the way of Jesus and to model it consistently and long enough that he could literally follow in his footsteps. And I think like, what a beautiful picture. For me, that story and that little image is just like this moment of like, that's it. We don't have to be amazing or be the most outgoing or love getting on and talking on a live mic. But man, can we reach out to the people around us and take this rowdy leap that the God of the universe is trustworthy and that he is wooing all people to himself, and that you and I are invited to be part of that story. And so I want to invite you for a second to consider, what rowdy step is the God of the universe inviting you to make? What leap of faith is he asking you? Is it about those who are on the bottom, those that are the least of these? Or is he inviting you to help someone say yes to Jesus? Now, I want to say that I'm trying to experiment with some new ways. So for me, I'm going to experiment with this Alpha Course thing. This is one leap of faith I'm sharing with you because I want to do it. And I know that when people know and they're like, hey, Dave, how's that going? That Alpha Course thing, is it working? Is it helpful? I share it because I am a human like you, and I'm trying to make leaps, and I need people that help me keep going. I don't move alone. I move with people who are saying, let's go for it. If you go, I'm going with you. But man, I want to experiment with this Alpha Course. It's just simply an 8-week video series that leads a conversation and discussion about faith in a really open and compelling way for the people of our world. And my hope is that it is an answer to help share the good news of Jesus. So I'm trying to get together a cohort. So if you want to be a part of that, email any admin or email me, david.lawson@nefw.org. And I'll get you in on the communication. I'm going to get together a cohort of people who are going to experiment with the series so you can know, is this any good? Maybe at the end of the 8 weeks, you're like, that's good, but not for me. Or maybe you would say, like, that is incredible. I have family or friends or neighbors or coworkers who need that. So if this is, for some of you, it is. You want to experiment with something. You want to sink your teeth into an action. And you want to do it with a cohort of people. We're going to go through the series. We're going to have practical challenges that help us move towards neighbors relationally, so that way, come warm weather, we've won a voice to be heard with our neighbors. They know we care. We've shared some meals maybe. Maybe we've done something. But we're then going to create spaces in the neighborhood. And our hope as a community is to run a couple different one of these Alpha courses where we get to see as a community our life is good news to the people around us. We are taking our faith and putting into actions, and so that the kingdom of Christ comes into new lives. And so if that feels exciting to you and gets you fired up, man, email me. Yeah, I'm putting an obstacle in your way. You got to reach out and email if you want in. I didn't make it super easy, and that's on purpose. If you want this, I want you to take a step. Do it today. Email me now. I'll check my email later, and I'll get back to you. And we'll figure out a time to get this cohort together. But my hope is that you and I are animated and moved by the great love of the God of the universe. I think if this is just simply like a try harder message, there's a little bit of something missing, right? And we all kind of feel that. I don't have the energy and passion in the tank to convince you that make the leap. But the quality of the one we trust in, the God of the universe, moves this kind of way. The incarnation speaks that he loves us deeply, and he's moving towards us. And he's making the move. And he's inviting us to make the same leap. And our leap is empowered by the deep certainty that his love got us. That you and my soul is eternally safe with him. That he has us. That we may lose jobs, people we love will die. But we are held, and they are held in the loving hands of a loving Father. And man, as I get to be in the role of a father and see what that feels like, I feel the deep love of God in just a way that is hard to put into words. May you feel that the deep love of the Father cares for you and has you. As you make this leap, he's with you. He's excited and has a smile on his face as we make these leaps. And as we move towards Jesus thinking of the cross, that Jesus loves us enough and would die for us. That's the kind of risky move he would make. That he would open his arms wide up and say, I love you. And I refuse to not love you. I refuse to live in a world where you don't know the depths of my love. I am willing to die for you. You have my love. It is deep in your soul, and I care for you, and I love you. And man, as the God of the universe says that, and if you feel that lifting your soul, you're like, yes, Lord, let's make some moves. So as you come and you have communion, I sadly skied over and forgot all of my elements. But let's raise a glass together that Jesus' blood shed on our behalf. And his body. As we think about risk, his body. He makes the move first. He fills our soul, puts wind in our hearts. His body, broken for us, so that we might live. Let's take this in remembrance of him. Well, brothers and sisters, it's been a joy to be with you this morning. I'm not going to end in a closing song because you don't want me to. But it's been a pleasure to be with you. So glad you tuned in.